Captain Kim Hyun-woo pressed his face against the observation window, watching the horror unfold below. The space station's medical bay, which had been buzzing with life just minutes ago, now looked like a war zone. Bright plasma bolts cut through the air like deadly lightning, turning everything they touched into molten metal and ash. Dr. Park Ji-hai had been in the middle of removing a brain tumor from a young colonist when the attack began. She was known throughout the sector as one of the best surgeons alive, someone who could save lives that others had given up on. Her hands had been steady, her focus complete, right up until the moment the Zephyrian raiders smashed through the reinforced walls. The aliens moved with cold precision. They weren't looting or searching for valuable equipment like normal pirates would. Instead, they methodically hunted down every person wearing medical scrubs. Nurses trying to protect their patients were shot down without mercy. Doctors attempting to surrender were ignored and killed on the spot. Even the medical droids were torn apart with savage efficiency. Lieutenant Lee Min-ho's voice crackled through the comm system from the communications center. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by barely controlled rage. "Captain, I'm getting reports from across the sector. This isn't random. 17 of our colonies have been hit in the past 7 days. Every single time, they go for the medical facilities first." Hyun-woo felt his blood turn cold. 17 colonies meant thousands of medical personnel. Doctors, nurses, medics, researchers, all the people who dedicated their lives to healing others. The Zephyrians were systematically wiping out humanity's ability to care for the sick and wounded. Through the smoke and chaos below, he could see Dr. Park Ji-hai's body being dragged across the floor by one of the alien attackers. Her surgical gown was torn and bloody, her tools scattered across the operating room. Just an hour ago, she had been laughing with her team about her daughter's first steps. Now she was gone. Another casualty in what was becoming clear was not just an attack, but a strategy. "Sir, what are your orders?" Min-ho asked, his voice tight with emotion. Hyun-woo watched as the last of the medical staff fell. The Zephyrians moved with practiced ease, destroying medical equipment and research data, with the same ruthless efficiency they had shown in killing the people. They knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't about territory or resources. This was about crippling humanity's expansion by removing their ability to treat the wounded and sick. The captain's hands slowly curled into fists. In all his years of military service, he had seen enemies do terrible things. He had witnessed battles where mercy was rare and cruelty was common. But this was different. This was an attack on the very foundation of civilization itself. The Zephyrians had crossed a line that even the most hardened soldiers found unthinkable. They had declared war on healers, on the people who saved lives regardless of species or allegiance. As he watched the medical bay burn, Captain Kim Hyun-woo realized that this act would demand a response unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Intelligence Officer Choi Dong-hyuk hadn't slept in 3 days. His eyes were bloodshot as he carefully placed each holographic marker on the 3-dimensional star map floating above the briefing table. The room was dimly lit, but the red glow from dozens of markers made everyone's face look like they were bathed in blood. General Nam Tai-ho stood at the head of the table, his weathered face growing darker with each new marker that appeared. Behind him, Dr. Yoon Sora clutched a datapad containing the names of over 2,000 medical personnel who had been killed in the past 2 weeks. "Look at this pattern," Dong-hyuk said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. He gestured to the map where red markers formed a clear line cutting through human space. Every attack follows the same playbook. The Zephyrians bypass military installations, ignore resource depots, and head straight for anything with a medical cross on it. He zoomed in on the Kepler 442 system, where 3 separate colonies had been hit within hours of each other. Here at New Busan, they destroyed the children's hospital first, killed 42 pediatric doctors and over 100 nurses. Then they moved to the trauma center and did the same thing. Dr. Yoon So-ra's hands trembled as she looked at the data. She had trained many of those doctors personally, had watched them graduate from medical school with hope in their eyes. Now their names were just statistics on a casualty report. "It's not random violence," Dong-hyuk continued, highlighting another cluster of attacks. "They're specifically targeting our medical infrastructure, field hospitals, research stations. Even medical supply convoys, they know exactly what they're doing. General Nam studied the tactical implications with growing horror. In his 40 years of military service, he had never seen an enemy strategy quite like this. Most alien species fought for territory, resources, or political advantage. The Zephyrians were doing something far more sinister. They're trying to collapse our expansion from the inside, Nam realized. Human colonies survive because we're better at keeping people alive than any other species in the galaxy. Our medical technology, our doctors, our ability to treat injuries that would kill others, that's what lets us thrive on harsh worlds. Dong-hyuk nodded grimly. Exactly. Cut off medical support, and our colonies become death traps. Settlers won't risk moving to new worlds if they know a simple accident could be fatal. Our expansion stops dead. Dr. Yoon So-ra finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. My people didn't sign up for this. They became doctors to save lives, not to become military targets. Every day I get calls from medical staff asking for transfers back to Earth. They're terrified. She pulled up images of the attacks on her datapad. Young nurses hiding in supply closets. Surgeons trying to shield their patients with their own bodies. Medical students who had barely graduated, being hunted down like criminals. We need protection, she said, looking directly at General Nam. My people can't do their jobs if they're constantly looking over their shoulders for the next attack. Nam's expression was pained. The military was already stretched thin across dozens of worlds, fighting conventional battles against Zephyrian forces. Every ship assigned to guard medical facilities was a ship that couldn't defend strategic positions. Protection, we can't spare, he replied grimly, the weight of impossible choices crushing down on him. Dr. Yoon So-ra walked into the UN Security Council chamber with blood still under her fingernails. She had just finished a 12-hour surgery, trying to save a young medic who had survived the latest Zephyrian attack. The girl had made it through the operation, but barely. So-ra's surgical scrubs were stained with evidence of the fight for that young woman's life. The council chamber was intimidating, with its high ceilings and formal atmosphere. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in a semicircle, their faces showing various degrees of concern and political calculation. Behind So-ra, massive screens displayed the horrific images she had brought with her. Photos of destroyed hospitals, murdered doctors, and medical staff who had died trying to protect their patients. So-ra had practiced this speech for days, but standing here now, the words felt inadequate. How do you explain to politicians the reality of watching your colleagues hunted down like animals? How do you make them understand that every day of delay meant more healers would die? Members of the council, she began, her voice steady despite the exhaustion weighing on her shoulders. For the past month I've watched my people die, not in accidents, not from disease, but because they chose to dedicate their lives to healing others. She gestured to the screens behind her, where images of the carnage played in silent rotation. And we've asked for military protection, we've begged for escorts, we've pleaded for help. And the answer is always the same. There aren't enough soldiers to go around. Council Chairman Kang Soo-jin shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The political reality was harsh but simple. Military resources were limited, and protecting medical facilities meant leaving other strategic positions vulnerable. Dr. Yoon, he said carefully, we understand your frustration, but we cannot compromise military operations to— Then don't, So-ra interrupted, her voice carrying a steel that surprised even herself. If you won't give us soldiers, then give us the tools to become our own protectors. A murmur ran through the chamber. Several representatives leaned forward, suddenly more interested in what the doctor had to say. So-ra pulled out a small datapad and activated a holographic display. Images of soldiers from humanity's past appeared, medics carrying both medical supplies and weapons, doctors who had learned to fight alongside healing. Our ancestors understood something we've forgotten, she continued. During the old wars, on Earth, combat medics didn't just patch up wounds, they learned to prevent them. They studied anatomy not just to heal, but to understand how bodies could be stopped when necessary. The chamber fell silent. These weren't just doctors with guns she was talking about. This was something far more sophisticated and potentially dangerous. Council Chairman Kang Soo-jin frowned deeply. The implications of what she was suggesting sent chills down his spine. "Dr. Yun, are you asking us to weaponize doctors, to turn healers into killers?" Sora met his gaze without flinching. Behind her, another image flashed on the screen. A children's hospital in flames, tiny bodies covered in sheets. "I'm asking you to let doctors defend themselves," she replied, her voice carrying the weight of every colleague she had lost. "And Chairman Kang, I know exactly how to do it. The technology exists. The training protocols exist. All we need is permission to use them." She paused, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. The Zephyrians made a mistake when they decided to hunt healers. They're about to learn why. The elevator descended for what felt like forever, carrying Dr. Yun Sora and General Nam Teho deeper into the heart of Seoul Station than most people knew existed. The walls changed from polished metal to rough concrete as they went down, level after level, until they reached a depth where the station's humming machinery was just a distant whisper. When the doors finally opened, they stepped into a corridor. That looked like it belonged in a different era. The lighting was harsh and white, casting sharp shadows between rows of filing cabinets that stretched as far as the eye could see. This was where humanity kept its darkest secrets, the projects, that had been buried so deep that even their existence was classified. Sora pulled out her security card and pressed it against a scanner. Her hands were steady, but Nam could see the tension in her shoulders. She had been thinking about this moment for weeks, ever since the Council had given her permission to explore alternative solutions to the medical crisis. "Are you sure about this?" Nam asked as they walked between towering shelves of sealed documents. "Some things are classified for good reasons." She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she led him to a specific section marked with warnings in multiple languages. The files here were sealed with locks that required both of their security clearances to open. When the heavy door finally swung open, they found themselves looking at decades of research that had never seen the light of day. Sora pulled out a thick folder marked Project Reaper and spread its contents across a nearby table. The documents were yellowed with age, but the data they contained was still shocking. Medical charts, psychological profiles, and combat effectiveness reports painted a picture of something that had once terrified even the people who created. "It enhanced combat medics from the Unification Wars," Nam read aloud, his voice growing quieter with each word. "Cancelled due to ethical concerns." He looked up at Sora with worry in his eyes. What exactly were they doing down here? Sora pointed to a series of brain scans and neural mapping charts. They started with the best medics they could find, doctors who understood anatomy better than anyone else alive. Then they enhanced them. The files showed the process in detail: neural implants that increased reaction time and tactical awareness, genetic modifications that improved physical strength and endurance. Most disturbing of all, psychological conditioning that allowed these enhanced medics to switch between healing and killing with frightening ease. "Look at this performance data," Sora said, her finger tracing charts that showed combat effectiveness ratings. These weren't just medics with weapons. They had perfect anatomical knowledge turned into a combat advantage. They knew exactly where to strike to disable an enemy instantly, or how to stop a heart with just the right pressure in the right place. Nam studied a photograph of one of the original Reapers. The man looked like any other doctor, but his eyes held something, cold and calculating. "They could stop a heart as easily as restart one," Nam murmured, understanding the full horror of what he was looking at. The general set down the files and looked at Sora with deep concern. These weren't healers anymore, were they? Sora met his gaze without flinching. She had spent weeks reading these files, understanding what the Reaper program had really been about. "No," she agreed quietly. "They were healers who chose to become something else when healing wasn't enough." The silence stretched between them as they both contemplated what they were considering unleashing upon the galaxy. Dr. Han Wu-jin blinked as the neural implants behind his ears hummed to life. The world around him suddenly became crystal clear, like someone had adjusted the focus on reality itself. Every sound, every movement, every detail of the burning colony street was processed and categorized by the enhanced systems now running through his brain. 3 weeks ago, he had been a simple trauma surgeon working at Seoul General Hospital. Today, he was something entirely different, The Reaper program had changed him in ways that still felt strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Behind him, 11 other enhanced medics moved through the smoke-filled streets of Haven Colony with an eerie coordination. They no longer needed to speak out loud to communicate. The tactical network connected their minds, allowing them to share information instantly. It was like being part of a single organism with 12 bodies. The colony had been under attack for 6 hours. Zephyrian raiders had hit the medical district first, just like they always did. But this time, instead of finding helpless doctors and nurses, they had found the Reapers waiting for them. "Civilian casualties in Building 7, reported Medic O'Daun through their shared mental link. Her voice appeared directly in Wu Jin's mind, along with thermal imaging data, showing the location of wounded colonists trapped inside the damaged structure. Wu Jin processed the information in milliseconds. His enhanced brain automatically calculated the best response, dividing his team's skills between their dual purposes. "Kim Jae-sung, Lim Yu-jin, stabilize the wounded," he ordered through the neural network. "Park Chan-ho, Song Hai-won, eliminate." The Zephyrian fire team on the 3rd floor. The response was immediate and flawless. The Reapers split into 2 groups without hesitation, each moving with the deadly precision that their training had burned into their enhanced nervous systems. Jae-sung and Yu-jin rushed into Building 7, carrying medical supplies that had been modified for combat conditions. Their enhanced senses immediately located the wounded civilians. A family of 4 trapped under debris, a young mother bleeding from shrapnel wounds, an elderly man suffering from smoke inhalation. Meanwhile, Chan-ho and Hai-won scaled the outside of the building with superhuman agility. Their enhanced muscles and reflexes allowed them to climb surfaces that would have been impossible for normal humans. They moved like deadly shadows, using their perfect knowledge of anatomy to disable the Zephyrian soldiers with surgical precision. The contrast was stunning. On the 2nd floor, Jae-sung was performing emergency surgery on a child who had been crushed by falling concrete. His hands moved with impossible steadiness, guided by neural implants that eliminated tremors and enhanced his natural surgical skills. He worked by the light of burning debris, removing internal bleeding and repairing damaged organs with equipment he carried in a backpack. 3 floors above him, Chan-ho was ending lives with the same clinical efficiency. He struck nerve clusters with perfect accuracy, causing instant paralysis. He applied pressure to specific arteries, cutting off blood flow to the brain. Each movement was calculated to be as quick and painless as possible. The Reapers still honored their oath to minimize suffering, even when killing. Within 10 minutes, the building was secure. The wounded civilians were stabilized and ready for transport to the emergency medical center that the Reapers had established in the colony's community hall. The Zephyrian fire team was eliminated, their bodies arranged respectfully despite the circumstances. As Wu Jin coordinated the evacuation, he felt the strange duality of his new existence. Part of him was still the healer who had spent years saving lives. But another part, the part enhanced by technology and training, was something harder and more dangerous. The Reapers had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The recording started by accident. A news drone had been documenting the aftermath of the Haven Colony attack, when it captured something that would change how the entire galaxy viewed humanity. The footage was grainy and shaky, but what it showed was crystal clear. Dr. Han Wu Jin knelt beside a small child in the ruins of what had been the colony's school. The little girl couldn't have been more than 6 years old, and a piece of metal. Debris had pierced her chest dangerously close to her heart. Blood pooled around her tiny body as she struggled to breathe. Wu Jin's hands moved with incredible precision, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to perform surgery that would have been impossible under normal battlefield conditions. He used a laser scalpel to carefully navigate around damaged tissue, while his neural implants fed him real-time data about the child's vital signs. Within minutes, he had stopped the bleeding and stabilized her condition. As he worked, his surgical tools became stained with the child's blood, but he didn't stop to clean them. There wasn't time. Other wounded civilians needed his help, and every second counted. That's when the Zephyrian commander appeared. The alien warrior was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin like armored plates. He had been hunting through the ruins looking for humans to kill when he stumbled upon the makeshift medical station that Wu Jin had set up in the school's gymnasium. The commander raised his plasma rifle, ready to add another dead human medic to his collection, but something made him pause. Maybe it was the way Wu Jin continued working on the child, even with death pointing a weapon at him. Maybe it was the complete lack of fear in the human's eyes. "You should run, little healer," the commander said in broken human language. "Running might make this fun." Wu Jin didn't look up from his patient. He finished sealing the child's wound and gently moved her to a safe spot behind some overturned desks. Only then did he stand and face the alien warrior. The news drone captured everything that happened next. "We took an oath," Wu Jin said quietly, his voice calm despite the deadly situation. His surgical tools were still in his hands, still bloody, from saving the child's life. "First, do no harm to the innocent." The Zephyrian commander laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the ruined school. "And what about harm to the guilty human? What about harm to me?" Wu Jin's enhanced senses analyzed the alien's physiology in milliseconds. Neural cluster locations, arterial pathways, pressure points that could disable or kill, all the information flowed through his implants like a medical textbook written in violence. "But for those who murder healers," Wu Jin continued, taking a step closer to the towering alien. The commander's eyes widened as the human's enhanced fingers moved with surgical precision, finding nerve clusters that the alien didn't even know existed. "We know exactly where it hurts most." What happened next was over in seconds. The commander collapsed, paralyzed but alive, his weapon clattering uselessly to the floor. Wu Jin had used his perfect knowledge of anatomy to disable the alien without killing him, a demonstration of controlled power that was somehow more terrifying than simple murder. The recording ended there, but its impact had only just begun. Within hours, the footage was spreading across every communication network in the galaxy. The Zephyrian fleet retreated from Haven Colony that same day, and similar retreats happened at colonies across human space. The galaxy's species began to whisper about something new and frightening: human medics who had forgotten how to show mercy to the merciless. Dr. Yang Ye-jin had been performing heart surgery for 14 straight hours when the Zephyrian Deathbringers arrived at Sanctuary Prime. The patient on her operating table was a young colonist who had been injured in the initial bombardment. His heart had been damaged by shrapnel, and without immediate surgery he would die within minutes. But Ye-jin couldn't stop operating, even as the most elite Zephyrian warriors in the galaxy descended on her hospital. The neural implants in E. Her brain allowed her to process multiple streams of information simultaneously. Through her enhanced senses, she could monitor the surgery, coordinate the colony's defense, and track enemy movements all at the same time. "Doctor, we're reading massive energy signatures incoming," reported her tactical coordinator through the neural network. "These aren't regular raiders. Intelligence confirms these are Deathbringers, the Zephyrian Empire's most dangerous soldiers." Ye-jin's hands never paused as she carefully removed damaged tissue from around the patient's heart. The Deathbringers were legendary throughout the galaxy. Each one had killed hundreds of enemies in battle. They were sent only when the Zephyrian High Command wanted to make absolutely sure their target was eliminated. "How many?" she asked through the mental link while simultaneously monitoring her patient's vital signs. 12 squads. Nearly 200 elite warriors. They're spreading out to hit all our medical facilities simultaneously. The battle plan was elegant in its brutality. The Deathbringers would strike every hospital, clinic, and medical station on Sanctuary Prime at exactly the same moment. No matter how skilled the Reapers were, they couldn't be everywhere at once. It was designed to overwhelm their defenses through sheer numbers and coordination. But the Zephyrians had made one crucial mistake. They still thought like traditional warriors, focused on direct confrontation and overwhelming force. The Reapers thought like doctors. They understood systems, weaknesses, and how to turn an enemy's strength against them. Zephyrian Deathbringers, advancing on Hospital Complex 3, came the urgent tactical report. Through her implants, Ye-jin could see the thermal signatures of 40 elite warriors moving through the hospital's main corridors. She made a delicate incision around the damaged heart valve, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to work with impossible precision, even while, under extreme stress. "Redirect them to Trauma Bay 5, she replied calmly through the neural network. Her surgical team looked at her with confusion. Trauma Bay 5 was on the opposite side of the hospital from where the Deathbringers were currently located. Why would they want to send the enemy toward one of their most important medical facilities? Seo Jun-ho has prepared a special reception, Hye-jin added, and suddenly her team understood. Dr. Seo Jun-ho had been the colony's leading expert in emergency medicine before becoming a Reaper. But his real specialty had always been understanding trauma, how bodies responded to extreme damage, what injuries were survivable, and what would cause immediate incapacitation or death. Trauma Bay 5 looked like any other medical facility from the outside, but Jun-ho had spent weeks modifying it into something much more dangerous. The room's layout had been carefully designed to funnel attackers into specific positions. Medical equipment had been rigged to release knockout gases at precise moments. Even the lighting had been adjusted to create blind spots that would confuse thermal imaging. Most importantly, Jun-ho had studied Zephyrian physiology until he knew their bodies better than they did. He understood their pressure points, their nervous system, their cardiovascular weaknesses. The reception he had prepared wasn't just a trap, it was a precisely engineered kill zone designed by someone who understood exactly how Zephyrian bodies could break and die. As the Deathbringers moved through the hospital's corridors, following the route that Hye-jin's team had subtly guided them toward, they had no idea they were walking into a demonstration of human compassion turned into something terrifyingly efficient. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans applied their medical knowledge to warfare, the results were unlike anything the universe had ever seen. Ambassador Bae Yeon-soo walked into the Galactic Council chamber, knowing that every eye in the galaxy would be watching. Representatives from over 200 species filled the massive circular hall, their various forms creating a rainbow of alien diversity. But today, they were all focused on one thing: the footage that had been playing on every news network for the past week. The screens around the chamber showed split-screen images that had shocked civilizations across the galaxy. On one side, Dr. Yang Hye-jin performed delicate heart surgery while coordinating a military defense. On the other side, the same enhanced human medics moved through combat zones with deadly precision, neutralizing threats with the same steady hands they used to save lives. Yeon-soo had spent 30 years as a diplomat, negotiating treaties and resolving conflicts between species that had been enemies for centuries. But she had never walked into a room where the tension was quite this thick. The other ambassadors weren't just curious, they were afraid. The Altarian delegate, a crystalline being whose species had perfected peaceful conflict resolution, spoke first. "Ambassador Bae, these recordings show your people doing things that violate every principle of medical ethics. How can healers become killers so easily?" Yeon-soo activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber. New footage began playing, scenes from the attacks that had started this whole crisis. Zephyrian raiders gunning down nurses in hospital corridors, medical students being executed while trying to protect their patients, children's hospitals burning while doctors died trying to evacuate the wounded. "You want to talk about medical ethics?" Yeon-soo's voice carried across the silent chamber. "Where were your ethics when they murdered our healers? When hospitals became battlefields and medical stations became graveyards?" She gestured to the Zephyrian delegate, a massive reptilian creature who had been unusually quiet throughout the session. "For months we begged for help. We pleaded with this council to protect our medical personnel. We showed you evidence of systematic attacks on non-combatants. And what did you do?" The chamber remained silent. Every species represented here had received those pleas for help. Every one of them had found reasons to stay neutral, to avoid getting involved in what they saw as a human problem. "You remained silent," Yeon-soo continued, her voice growing stronger. "You watched as they turned our greatest strength into our greatest vulnerability. Our compassion, our dedication to healing, our refusal to abandon the wounded. They weaponized our mercy against us." The footage changed again, showing the aftermath of Sanctuary Prime. Reaper medics worked tirelessly to save both human and Zephyrian wounded, their enhanced abilities allowing them to perform medical miracles even in the middle of a war zone. But the same hands that performed surgery also carried weapons and used them with terrifying efficiency when protecting their patients. "Now you see what happens when we turn our greatest strength into our greatest weapon," Yonsu said. "We didn't create monster soldiers. We didn't abandon our principles. We created healers who refused to let healing die." The Zephyrian delegate finally spoke, his voice rough with something that might have been fear. "Your Reapers. They are not natural. They violate the laws of war." Yonsu turned to face the alien directly. "The laws of war were violated the moment you started hunting doctors. You taught us that mercy was a weakness to be exploited. So we showed you what happens when humans stop being merciful to those who show no mercy." She activated the final piece of footage, surveillance video from the Zephyrian command ship retreating from Haven Colony. The alien commanders had been in full panic, abandoning their attack despite having overwhelming numbers and firepower. "The vote before you today is simple," Yonsu announced. "Do we establish universal protections for medical personnel, or do we allow this horror to continue?" The vote was swift and unanimous. Attacks on medical personnel were now crimes against all civilized species, punishable by the full force of galactic law. As the session ended, every species in the galaxy understood a new truth. Humanity's compassion was not a weakness to be exploited, but a force to be respected and protected. Dr. Han Woo-jin stood in the equipment room of Seoul Medical Center, slowly removing pieces of tactical gear that had become as familiar as his stethoscope. The combat armor came off first, its weight lifting from his shoulders like a burden he was finally allowed to set down. Next came the weapon harnesses, the communication devices, and the enhanced targeting systems that had turned him into something more than just a doctor. His hands moved carefully as he folded each piece of equipment, placing them in storage containers that would likely never be opened again. The war was over. The Zephyrian Empire had signed a peace treaty that included protections for medical personnel throughout the galaxy. The systematic hunting of healers had stopped, and the Reaper program was being officially shut down. Around him, 11 other enhanced medics went through the same ritual. Some looked relieved to be returning to their original calling. Others seemed uncertain about giving up the power they had wielded. All of them understood that they were witnesses to history. They had been part of something that changed how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. Dr. Yoon Sora watched from the doorway as her creation was dismantled. The woman who had convinced the UN Security Council to resurrect the Reaper program now oversaw its end. Her face showed a mixture of pride and sadness as she observed the enhanced medics returning to their peaceful roles. "The neural implants," she said quietly, addressing the group. "The enhancements to your reflexes and tactical awareness. We can remove them if you want. Return you to exactly what you were before." Several of the Reapers looked up from their packing. This was the question they had all been wondering about but hadn't dared to ask. The implants had changed them fundamentally, giving them abilities that no normal human possessed. Going back to regular medicine would mean giving up superhuman reflexes, enhanced senses, and the tactical awareness that had made them so effective. Wu Jin was the first to respond. He picked up his medical scrubs from a nearby shelf and began putting them on, the simple green outfit that marked him as a healer rather than a warrior. "Will you keep the implants?" Sora asked him directly. Wu Jin paused, considering the weight of the question. Through his enhanced senses, he could hear the sounds of the hospital around them. Patients recovering from surgery, medical students, learning to save lives, nurses working double shifts to care for the wounded. This was the world he had originally chosen to be part of, a world dedicated to preserving life rather than ending it. "The galaxy needs to remember," he replied finally, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had made him an effective Reaper leader. "That our mercy is a choice, not a weakness. And choices can change." The other Reapers nodded in understanding. They would keep their enhancements, but use them only for healing. The implants that had once coordinated deadly strikes would now guide surgical procedures. The reflexes that had disabled enemies would help save patients in critical condition. Later that day, Wu Jin walked through the medical bay where former Zephyrian soldiers were receiving treatment alongside human patients. The same hands that had defeated these aliens in combat now worked to heal their injuries. Reaper medics performed surgery on the warriors they had once fought, their enhanced abilities allowing them to save lives that would have been lost to lesser doctors. A young Zephyrian soldier looked up at Wu Jin with a mixture of fear and gratitude. The alien recognized him from the battlefield footage that had played across the galaxy, but now, instead of tactical gear and weapons, Wu Jin wore simple scrubs and carried only medical instruments. "Why?" the alien asked in broken human language. "Why save enemies?" Wu Jin checked the patient's vital signs with enhanced precision before answering. "Because that's what healers do. We save lives, all lives." As he worked, other medical staff watched with quiet respect. The Reapers had returned to their calling, but their legend remained intact. Every doctor, nurse, and medic in the galaxy now knew that humanity's dedication to healing came with an unspoken promise, and a warning to any who would threaten those who heal. The age of the Reapers was over, but their message would echo through the stars forever.